Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and communication issues and problems. Now, as far as natally, when you look at someone that might have some communication issues, well, first of all, you can look at the placement of Mercury. Mercury, as many of you may know, it's in its detriment and fall in Pisces, and in its detriment in Sagittarius. Now, looking at it as far as Sagittarius goes, with someone who's Mercury and Sag, they act a little. I've noticed some people will they'll form their opinion, their philosophies, often without gathering or assimilating all the details. And you look at Bill Nye, the science guy, he's a classic example of debunking astrology without getting really all the details due to superficial knowledge of the subject. You look at them, and then Mercury and Pisces, they can just, like Sagittarius, they can lack the details now in their thinking, and also, Pisces is just, being really water as well. Emotions can strongly cloud logical thinking with Pisces, and emotions can be, all-embracing, all-encompassing. There's often, and given that Pisces is not known for their best memory, that can play a role too, and really Mercury and Pisces not being really a good placement by that sign. And the thing about it is, and really, you're talking, Mercury and Pisces tries to go more on their intuition rather than using, logical deduction, and mentally they may be somewhat disorganized, disheveled. So I think for those reasons you can understand why Mercury and Pisces is in its detriment and fall now. And you look at it like the aspects involving Mercury. If Mercury is strongly afflicted, the person may have some communication issues. If somebody has Mercury, say, an adverse aspect to their natal Uranus, this could be about intermittent communications, very sporadic and erratic ones, and sometimes it could be chaotic thinking as well. If somebody has, say, they got their Mars making an adverse aspect to their Mercury in their chart, this could be about really a lot of communications that could be very contentious, acrimonious, maybe mad at themselves, sometimes for maybe not articulating things correctly. If Saturn is an adverse aspect to Mercury, this could be a person that might be taking too long to try to articulate what he or she wants to say. There might be too much premeditation, too much planning, and delays in what the person is actually going to be saying. But it's not, of course, it's more than just about Mercury and its sign and its aspects. You have if you have, say, you look at the third house, and if there is malefics in the third house, this can play a role as well. I saw somebody speaking. Somebody saw one time, heard one time speaking, had Saturn by the third house cusp, and in some, when you have a malefic in the third house, sometimes this could cause certain issues with communication. And the person that had the Saturn by the third house cusp, seemed like was really delayed when trying to speak, and it would just be a lot of hesitation before actually starting, and be good spaces between sentences. And the thing too is, if you have, say, another example, if you've got, say, Neptune in the third house, that could be something too, where this could be the dissolving of the memory and some chaotic, confused thinking. I know somebody that's got, a person, Mercury, that has his Mercury really strongly afflicted. He has it where it's retrograde. It makes an opposition to his moon, and he's had a number of very, you could say, very unpredictable outbursts that come very sporadically, very unpredictably. And with the Mercury is in Leo, opposition his moon, and Aquarius, Mercury again being retrograde, always constantly thinking, saying that he is right, and whoever he's arguing with will be wrong. So I think that's how it kind of manifested with him as far as that aspect goes, and that Leo energy opposing the Aquarius the Aquarius moon, it's like he'll try to justify any unusual outburst on his part. And those, I mean, those are some examples of some astrology and communication issues. Now, another thing too is like if you have Mercury in the 12th house, or if you have, I mean, that could be about limitations in communications. And let's say you have Mercury like in Pisces and retrograde and intercepted all rolled into one, and if you had it in the 12th house, that would not be obviously a good placement for Mercury, because you'd have a lot of limitation. You could manifest a lot of limitations in one's communications and in difficulty as far as details go, and organization, and really in being in the 12th house could be somewhat inhibited in terms of speaking up. Mercury retrograde can sometimes have difficulties in speaking out and standing up for things at a given time. Now, not all hope is lost in those instances, because a person through a progressed chart can have improvements in their Mercury placement, or it could also be modified with a strong dominant air influence in a chart, or some other modifications, contraindicators in one's natal chart. Say if somebody has their 3rd house or Mercury intercepted, that can play a role too, is as far as someone's communication being inhibited to some degree. Now, I mean, if somebody say, let's take another example, let's say that somebody has Mercury in Capricorn, right, and they have it retrograde. Mercury in Capricorn can really be very introspective by itself, and really weighing things a while before actually making a decision, without, I mean, not making a decision unless there's been protracted, prolonged premeditation. But if somebody were to have Mercury in Capricorn and have it retrograde, it could be a lot more review in connection with that. And the thing too is, and also, I mean, you can look at like a synastry in people's charts as far as, I mean, communications issues between two people. I mean, you could have your Mercury, say, very well placed and makes a plethora of good aspects, and it's in its dignity and this and that, but at the same time, that doesn't mean you won't have communication issues with other people. A lot of that could be predicated and dependent on the synastry and the aspects that are made to points in one's chart. Let's say if you have somebody that has their Pluto on your conjunct your Mercury, could be a person that might be trying to control and over what you say, and maybe manipulate your, you as far as your thinking. I mean, that could even be true. I mean, let's say if someone has their Pluto making an adverse aspect to your Mercury, that could be very manipulative in terms of that person trying to control what you say, and how you speak, and things of that nature. So, and I mean, you can have like there can also be, I mean, let's take, I mean, another example. I mean, let's say that somebody's there could be other things in the chart that could play roles in synastry that don't necessarily involve Mercury in terms of a communication issue. I mean, let's say if you have somebody's Mars conjunct another person's Mars, that could give very contentious situations, a lot of friction between two people. I had somebody that I know very well, and his Mars made a conjunction to my Mars in Cancer, and we had a number of contentious situations over food, over the speed I would eat, and things of that nature, matters in the home. So, I mean, in really, and if your Mercury, say, on top of that is not in good synastry with that person on the other end, or vice versa, that could even exacerbate even situations in terms of the communication. And as far as having communication issues, now in that example I talked about Mars, but when you have, I mean, when you have angry situations between two people, that could still involve communication and angry words that can be said. If somebody, say, has their Mercury making an adverse aspect to your moon, that could be a situation where somebody might become oversensitive over what a another person may say. I had somebody, at least on one occasion, have their Mercury in Virgo make a square to my moon in Gemini, and I would take some effrontery and offense to what I saw as derogatory, very critical, judgmental remarks, and it brought a lot of that animated, high-strung, Gemini moon response to it, and emotions, and maybe even just very animated feelings coming out, so to speak, and really and also very, of course, being in Gemini, could be very rambling, emotional response as well, and really those are some things to look at as far as astrology and communication issues and problems that one may have. And I mean, of course, the main things are looking at Mercury by placement aspect. If it's intercepted, or if it's in say the 12th house, which would be a considered limitation in communication in a lot of cases, you're going to look at those things very strongly. And also too, house rulers can play a role. That's one thing I almost forgot to mention before I end this. Let's say if you have the ruler of the 12th house in the 3rd house, or the ruler of the 3rd house in the 12th house, that could indicate limitations in communications. I have the ruler of the 12th house in my 3rd house in my natal chart, and I mean, it can manifest in more ways than just communication limitation. I also don't have any siblings. Mars is in my 3rd. That could be combating siblings, so to speak. But I also the way this worked out for me, I mean, you have to look at take the whole chart in consideration when you're evaluating some placement, because I believe I have certain ability to communicate. I think I have literary ability. I can be articulate and eloquent. But the thing is, the fact that I have the ruler of the 12th house in the 3rd house could indicate that I may simply just be limiting my communications with others. So those are some ways that could manifest and pan out. And also look at transits as well. I mean, if you have like somebody that has like their Mercury strongly afflicted, you could still benefit by transits. Say transit Jupiter making a sextile or trine to your natal Mercury can help. Transit Uranus making a sextile trine to your Mercury can give some ingenuity in thinking and be very creative, come up with innovative ideas, and be able and perhaps to speak with a lot of clarity, be very lucid and perspicacious in how you speak. Even a conjunction from Mercury to transit Uranus to Mercury can help as well, I would say. But at the same time, remember that conjunctions can be neutral, and a transit Uranus to Mercury can help with some innovative thinking, but it might also give some chaos in the person's as far as their thinking goes as well. So anyway, people, that will conclude this YouTube astrological segment for astrology and communication issues and problems. And until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.